My name is YuMing. I am one of the co-founders of SneakerCon. SneakerCon was co-founded in 2009 in New York City. Each year we see about 80,000 visitors to all of our shows. Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Detroit, and Phoenix. Today we're here in Hong Kong doing our first Asia show. And then after Hong Kong we go to Melbourne, Australia. And so we've been doing this for a very long time, and we wanted to expand our show into Asia, especially.
How did you come up with this idea? At the very beginning.
Sure. So it's actually a funny story because my partners, Alan and Barris, we actually discovered each other on eBay. eBay is an American, I guess, auction site that sells anything from antiques to all the way to sneakers and clothing and apparel and all kinds of random things that you and I can actually sell on there. It's a marketplace. So in 2008, I had just started a website called Sneaker News. And I was writing about sneakers by myself, and I found a pair of Carmelo Anthony PEs on eBay. And I wrote about those, posted on my website. And I get an email asking, why did you not credit us for this picture? And I realized that I had missed the credit line in the post. So we talked to each other for a little bit. It turns out that the people selling those shoes were Alan and Barris. And as it turns out, in our email, we saw that our office was actually about 5 blocks from each other on the same street. And so they suggested that we meet up to kind of just get acquainted with each other and learn from each other. And so we met up, and soon after they started telling me about doing a sneaker event. In 2005, I actually purchased a domain name called SneakerCon. I told them that, guys, I actually have the name for the show already. It's called SneakerCon. I was very inspired by Comic-Con, actually. And I said, if there is a Comic-Con, one day, hopefully, we can have a SneakerCon, a sneaker convention where like-minded people who like sneakers can come together and talk about sneakers. And, trade, buy, sell, and just have that community. We actually never thought that we would become an international convention. My biggest thought when I registered SneakerCon was, we can do this like Comic-Con in the United States. It still baffles me that people in Hong Kong, people in Australia, people in India, people in London, in Germany share the same love for sneakers as they do for comic books.
Before you do Sneaker News, what was your job?
Well, actually, I discovered this collectible sneaker world in around 2002. I was actually in college at that time, so I was still very poor because, college student, you're very poor. I couldn't really afford sneakers, but I actually got lucky and did an internship, and it was a paid internship. So I started making some of my own money, and I started to discover, fashion and sneakers and all this stuff. And I started discovering this subculture of sneakers, and I wanted to learn more about it. I guess the software called the blog had just come into existence at that time. And I said, what? I think I want to do a blog about this culture surrounding sneakers. And so I started building something called freshnessmag.com. Eventually, I partnered with one of my college buddies. And after we graduated from college, we developed that into a business, of course, just as a hobby. And slowly, we just kept doing it for quite a while. During that time, I realized that there was no money in it. Blogging had just come into existence. And even having a website, news website, is very, very hard to actually find funding or money or advertising at that time. So I looked for a job in around 2003, 2004. I found a job in the United States with an agency called the RGA. It turns out that RGA is Nike is digital agency in the United States. So I ended up getting that job because I had built this website called Freshness, and they really liked what I was doing, I spent 3 years at RGA working on NikeBasketball.com. While I was still there, I also worked on the Nike Air Force One website around the 25th anniversary. I learned a lot about web culture and web stuff. I read a lot of business magazines. I learned about domains, and so that's how I actually got into buying domains. I read an article about domains as real estate, and so I started buying digital real estate basically. And luckily, I purchased Sneaker News, I purchased SneakerCon, two of the, I guess, for me, the most successful digital real estate purchases ever.
You said you met some difficulties, but what drives you being so persistent and keeping on the
I think my family immigrated from China to the United States. I'm from the Guangdong area. I'm from Taisan. So I'm from that village. So my family was actually very poor as immigrants that do not know English and do not know how to survive there. The hardship was very hard. So my dad in China was a chemist. Once he moved to the United States, he immediately started working a very hard job, which was a restaurant cook. My mom, who was a seamstress, ended up working in a sweatshop in the United States. Obviously, you know, a sweatshop, sewing clothes and all that stuff. And so you don't make a lot of money. I also worked in the restaurants my dad owned. I also worked in the sweatshops. So I went through all of those different processes to understand the hardship as well. So I went through the same hardship that my parents went through. So I really understood that you know, money doesn't grow on trees. That, you know, that saying, that you really have to work hard at it, and you really have to put a lot of energy into it. So that's what my upbringing was, to really, you know, my still drive, even though we're successful today, even though, you know, money is not an issue, you know, to say, not that I'm wealthy or anything, but, you know, we're successful. We have great jobs. I have a company, we have employees. So, you know, we're doing okay as a business. But still, you know, I look back to the time where I was still very poor in my upbringing, that you just can't take that for granted. So I still like to work hard. I still like to do as much as possible. So, you know, no matter how successful you are, you can still be the person that's sweeping the floors or cleaning up or whatever it is to, you know, to doing these shows. We go from, no matter which show it is, we build the show and we take it right back down. Those are the things that really drive me to continue to become, I guess, be more successful than we are today.
Sneaker culture is just a subculture, and before you do it as a real career, it's just your hobby. That's your hobby.
Yep.
Change your hobby from your hobby, change into a career. You made it's really strong decision. How did you get that?
The website I built after Freshness was actually a website called KicksFinder. It was a website that I needed to use to make money on its own. So that was my first attempt to build a website strictly for making money. It became a success for me. I needed a car and I couldn't afford it, so I built the website to pay for it. And then soon after, as I continued to work on it, it eventually made enough money to pay my salary as well. So that's when I made the decision that I have enough to work with here. I think if I leave my job, I can use this as a platform to grow into a business. And so that was a very big risk. That was around 2007. And then in 2008, the global market crashed. Globally traded companies such as McDonald's really stopped spending, or Coca-Cola or Nike. All those people stopped, lower their advertising spend. So our advertising revenue started to decline, and I started to see, and I didn't project for that. I didn't expect there to be a market crash. So, and for several months, for 1 month I couldn't pay my employee, and for almost 6 months I couldn't pay myself. And so I had to survive on some of the savings I had from my job, and also some of the early money that I made from KicksFinder. So those were, I would say, those were the things that really kind of continue to, that helped get us to where we are today.
One last question is, like, you're a businessman or you're a sneaker news founder. Doing sneaker reviews, how do you keep balance between the real shoes functions and the qualities and those advertisements business?
We don't really use, we don't let advertising affect our editorial focus, but we do have sponsored content, obviously. And those we're very open about, that this is sponsored by so-and-so. For instance, most recently we did sponsored content from Foot Locker Europe. And so we call out that this is a Foot Locker Europe sponsored piece of content that we wrote about. And we write that piece of article in a very neutral voice, not to say this is the best thing on the planet. We will just give you the facts. We don't go far and beyond in terms of how nice this collection of shoes might be.